Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the new Cannabis reality. I'm your host, Lisa Evers. Marijuana is now being sold legally at one dispensary in New York City, compared to hundreds of smoke shops selling illegal weed in many neighborhoods. While law enforcement tries to stop them with hefty fines, there's some confusion about how the laws apply. The first licensed recreational marijuana dispensary opened in New York City on December 29, 2022, to long lines and customers willing to pay $16 to $95 plus tax for 1/8 of an ounce. The decriminalization of recreational marijuana in New York State in March of 2021 under the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act paved the way to licensed marijuana dispensaries owned and operated by nonprofit organizations like Housing Works and private business owners, including some who were incarcerated under old marijuana laws. Office of Cannabis Management Executive Director Chris Alexander says they're working to ensure equity as well as safe products for consumers.
We prioritize licensing those who've been impacted by prohibition, who also have previous business experience. So we know we're getting business operators who are ready to come in and operate these businesses in a successful way.
Alexander says the state revenue generated by the legal dispensaries from fees, licenses, and sales taxes will be turned into profit with a purpose. He says skeptics can be reassured that the money will go there because it's written into the legislation.
40% going to support public education, 20% going to support drug treatment and prevention services across the state, and then the last 40 going to support the Community Grants Reinvestment Fund. Now, this is a fund that's going to fund, really targeted community projects.
As of January 2023, there was only one place in the entire city to buy recreational marijuana legally. OCM says they needed time to properly set up and license a new industry, but the 21-month gap since decriminalization left a void. New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda says hundreds of unlicensed smoke shops popped up in practically every city neighborhood. We got an exclusive look as Sheriff Miranda and a multi-agency task force took enforcement actions at some of the shops.
Anything else that you see out there is illegal, and it's an uncontrolled product. So it's really a public safety and public health issue that we're talking about. We know that there have been stories about what they mix these products with, and they're endangering our communities.
Sheriff Miranda says there's a widespread misconception that it's anything goes with marijuana, and that the smoke shops, where you can buy as much as you want, are legal.
I want to be clear about this. The law says 3 ounces or less. Anything above that mark would be subject to some type of enforcement.
Forbes reports that New York State's legal cannabis industry is expected to generate $4.2 billion by 2027. Evan Nissan, CEO of Nissan Co., a cannabis PR and marketing firm, says the economic impact could be even greater.
There's huge business opportunities. There's going to be a much bigger impact to the economy than even the studies are suggesting.
There's a lot to these major new developments. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me for this conversation is Anthony Miranda. He's the New York City Sheriff. Tony, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Lisa.
We appreciate it. Also with us is Evan Nissan. He's a CEO of Nissan Co., which is his own company that has many clients that are involved in the marijuana business. He's also vice chair of NORML, that's a national organization for the reform of marijuana laws. Evan, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. Also joining us is Chris Alexander. He's the executive director of the Office of Cannabis Management. And Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Chris, I want to start with you on this. This is a major development to have legal dispensaries in New York City and in New York State. What's your big picture view of how you want this to work?
Well, we started this fight a long time ago, and but the work of building up the agency, the rules that govern this new market is relatively new. We have really at the Office of Cannabis Management, at the State Office of Cannabis Management, prioritized making sure that consumers in New York have access to a safer and tested product, right? And so, as we go into this conversation today about the illegal shops that have popped up, and it's been a problem across the state. It's not just been New York City, though. New York City has been particularly bad. We are making sure that folks have access to that safer product. With the opening of the first dispensary, we are seeing the support and the willingness of the consumer to try a product that they know where it come from. It's been grown by small farmers and it's being sold by the first instance of the first dispensary by an entity that does good work in the community. So we're really excited about this moment. We know there's a lot more to do and there's a lot more dispensaries to open up in the next couple of months, but honestly, it's just making sure that New Yorkers can see the alternative. And because of the underlying mission tied to why we legalized and how we legalized, know that their contributions are going to some really good and important work that's going to be done across the state.
So you're talking about profit with a purpose, and we're going to get into that a little bit later in the show. Evan, in terms of where New York State is compared to other states, kind of give us a big picture here.
Sure. So nationally speaking, legalization is obviously spreading like wildfire. Over 43% of the U.S. population is currently under legal laws, and only 11 states in the entire country don't have some form of legalization, whether adult use or medical. But there's obviously still a lot of challenges that the industry is going through as it's being created. Each state is limited and not allowed to do any interstate commerce, which makes regulating things like prices very difficult. We can't, for instance, import the excesses from Oregon or California, which makes prices hard to keep down in New York, in this part of the country, at least now. But I do think that a lot of these issues that we're going to be discussing and that Chris just mentioned are temporary. These are pretty common as states transition from the legacy market to a legal and regulated market. And so a lot of these issues, in my opinion, are sort of to be expected and will be worked out.
All right, Tony, as you're the only law enforcement person on the panel here. In terms of where we are with the marijuana laws, there's a lot of people that think, okay, well, now we have our first legal dispensary. You smell it everywhere. People are smoking out in public. Everything is legal. Is that the reality?
No, that's not the reality. Again, legalization and decriminalization are two different things. Decriminalization was to protect the average user so they wouldn't, create the new generation of people getting arrested again. The legalization process, again, we only have one legal dispensary right now in New York that's selling. So anything else that you see out there is illegal. And it's an uncontrolled product. So it's really a public safety and public health issue that we're talking about. We know that there have been stories about what they mix these products with, and they're endangering our communities. So that's why it's really important for people to understand there's only one legal place right now. We know that market will develop and there'll be a control mechanism for it. And we think that's the most productive way of getting business done right now.
Don't go away. We'll be right back. Evan, in terms of the supply, so the New York State, the marijuana that's sold in the legal dispensary in New York State has to come from New York State. Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's correct. And pretty much every state also has a track and trace system or some type of system to make sure that cannabis is indeed coming from the legal regulated market. So there's a lot that needs to go into place to setting all of this up. In New Jersey, on the flip side, there's pros and cons to this, but what New Jersey decided to do is actually allow the medical dispensaries to convert to adult use quicker. So technically, New Jersey, started selling cannabis to adult consumers, regulated cannabis sooner, but the giant downside is that all of that is going to MSOs, which stands for multi-state operators, and those are the larger players that generally, don't need additional business opportunities.
It's taking a lot longer than a lot of consumers and the public would like to see, is because you wanted to try to ensure this diversity element and not have it, as sort of almost like a karmic righting of the wrongs of the past, where people of color and low-income communities were adversely punished, for using marijuana, as opposed to people in other backgrounds and other communities. So is that part of what's going on?
Absolutely. There was a commitment that we here in New York held ourselves to that, other folks did not prioritize, right? So making sure that folks who normally don't get the opportunities, who are usually left behind and left out, have the opportunities to participate. Holding ourselves to that standard is what has, made this a more deliberate process. What I will say is that I don't like the narrative that we're going slow. I was appointed in September. We built up an agency. We created a new supply chain and did so without relying on the existing operators or the MSOs. Now, there's a place for those folks to participate, but by doing what we've done, we've created new opportunities for others who normally would not have those opportunities. And so I want to emphasize that. But really the point in what we've done in our retail licensing, which is the last part of the supply chain that's coming online now, is making sure that those who've been impacted, as you said, have a real opportunity to participate. People who have suffered, who have had marijuana convictions on their record for years, who've been denied access to housing and employment and educational opportunities, making sure that they have a chance to participate is the broader goal.
There are, by conservative estimates, well over 1,000 of these smoke shops that have popped up all around the city. They're just selling marijuana openly. And the market is there, and they just don't seem to be going out of business for a lack of customers. How concerned are you about what's happening right now?
I think that we're working closely with all the agencies, including the Office of Cannabis Management, to control the expansion that initially took over the city. I think that, again, the concerns are serious. If people were trying to comply with the rules and regulations, then there's plenty out there already to follow. But they're clearly going contrary to the law right now, and there's no effort to comply. And that's the reason why all the agencies are now operating collectively, to use all of our enforcement powers in one operation to be able to take all the corrective action that's necessary. Packaging for children is something that should never have been done. And they're still doing it, right? So that's going to cause a crackdown. So when people look at it, people need to understand why we're doing what we're doing. It's because they're packaging to children. They're trying to attract it to the younger market. It's because it's an uncontrolled market. They're mixing these products with stuff that will harm adults. We've already had cases of overdoses and people who got sick because of the product that's been sold. So there is an absolute need for what we are doing. And I think the mayor's been very clear about it, right? He's talking about educating people first, and this is how you comply with the law if you want to participate in the market. It's giving them the warnings, and then it's taking whatever corrective action is necessary. So we are on that plan right now. And I think that it needs a response, and it needs a collective response. And I think the city's taking the right approach right now.
Chris, in terms of the quality control, since there's no uniform federal standard like for USDA, poultry or whatever, or the organic symbol or whatever, what should people look for? Like, when you buy something at the legal or the more that are coming legal dispensaries, are there certain markings? Are there certain quality guarantees? Take us through that.
Yeah, I mean, what we've actually seen in the illicit market too is fabrication and fraud related to.
We saw them with Sheriff Miranda. Yeah,
exactly. So folks are forging safety product labels from other states, particularly California, as a way to designate that this is some high quality product, which is not. That's coming into our supply chain or into our supply stream here in New York now. But for those who are interested in having a safer tested product, there's a verification tool on the outside of their current legal dispensary. And as we bring on more legal dispensaries, you will see that verification tool, that verification sign outside of those dispensaries, and on each regulated product that we're putting out through our licensees, you'll also see a New York safety label that includes a warning for folks under the age of 21 not to consume, and a barcode that allows you to scan that product and see its testing profiles and kind of, what is really in that product. And so, we're really proud of the way that we've approached regulation. We've been able to learn from other states. We've, of course, also had a medical program here in New York for many years that has, been really on the forefront of testing and making sure a product is safe for consumers. So we're going to continue that work as we build out the adult use market.
Sheriff Miranda, in terms of the fake labels, when we were out with you we did the ride along with you on some of the smoke shop bus, I was shocked to see how many stacks, you pointed out, stacks of these bags. Yeah. And some of them with kids, with kids cartoon characters on them, but these stacks of bags that had this fake California certificate of authenticity on them.
So we are working also with the state office, as well as the city law department, as well as the Department of Finance, to take other legal cases against these counterfeit products that are out there. Clearly, there are safety issues. I think I also want to emphasize, when people want to know that is the place legalized or not, they can go on the Office of State Cannabis and verify that information as well. And like you said, the safety labels are there to show where the product initiated from, what's in it. That's important. So scan those products and check them, because there's too many people putting things that are dangerous to our community in the product. And again, it's a public safety issue. It's a health issue right now. And everyone's concerned about it. And I think that's really what we're focusing on. It's not about criminalizing another generation of people. It is about making sure that we're going into the legal business. It should be safe for anybody who wants to participate in that market. And those are the protections that we're trying to put in place. And we're going to enforce the law the way it's written, and we're going to ensure that they're in compliance with all the rules and regulations.
Evan, what about how has this been working in California, say, for example?
Oh, yeah, to put this into context generally, whether we're talking about California or other states, this is all fairly standard. New York is definitely, I think, the issue is a little bit more exacerbated than other places, but in California is a good example where when they were implementing adult use legalization, there were gifting shops. In DC right now, where there's decriminalization, but Congress has prevented funds from being used to actually regulate the industry, there's gifting shops as well. So we see this happen pretty much everywhere whenever there is decriminalization before there is a regulated market, and even a little bit when the regulated market is starting. But eventually, once there's enough shops and there's enough supply where the price can compete, I don't think this is going to be an issue at all. I think this is a short-term thing that's caused mostly just by the supply and demand issues at play, which are very unique to this time period.
Chris, what about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I fully agree. I think the best way, we're never really going to fully, reduce to nothing the illicit market. There are always going to be illicit markets. There's illicit shops for, bags to, everything. But what it's most important is that we continue to increase access to the regulated, safer product. I want to say something too about the packaging and labeling attractive to kids. We have promulgated rules for packaging and labeling for our regulated licensed, producers and processors. And, we've pretty clearly forbid all products and packaging being made attractive to young people. And that is a great sign of a product that is not a regulated product as well. If you see Lucky Charms, cannabis, that's not something that New York State will allow, particularly products that match existing child goods, child candy or cereals, etc.
Chris, as we look ahead in terms of the economic advantages from legalizing the sale of marijuana in New York State, how critical is that, especially at this time with the way things are looking with the economy?
I mean, it's going to be an incredible boost, not just to the economy generally, but what we're doing is creating thousands of new businesses, right? There's new businesses, new entrepreneurs, new opportunities for general wealth creation for families, and particularly for those, folks from communities who've been impacted by prohibition as disproportionate enforcement. We're also looking at tens of thousands of jobs. The projections right now is around 60K, but I think it'll be significantly more than that when we talk about other businesses and other folks who are supporting licensed operators. So it's going to be a huge economic boost. And I think the most important thing to emphasize is the way that the revenue is going to be dedicated from this program. We've got 40% going to support public education, and we got 20% going to support drug treatment and prevention. And we got the last 40% going back directly into communities to support programs like job training, reentry programming, continuing adult education, after school programs, all great things that communities desperately need. And it's going to be funded by weed money. So really excited about that.
All right. Evan, do you have any concerns about this whole process or any things that you're keeping a close eye on?
I think one of the things that the entire country and a lot of states that are going to be implementing recreational laws in the future are looking at is the equity provisions, because a lot of states have tried doing equity right before, and everyone's been doing it differently, and I don't think anyone feels like it's been done perfectly yet. I know New York is spending a lot of energy on this, which I really applaud. New Jersey is as well for the next round of licenses that are coming up. The actual adult use specific licenses. So that's something that I am really focusing on, because one of the things that I've said for a long time is that if we get this right in the legal cannabis industry, we could expand, what we're doing now and best practices that we're learning and creating here to other industries as well. So I think there's a huge amount of potential here.
And Sheriff Miranda, what will you and your colleagues in law enforcement be looking at as we move forward here?
I think we take the same approach. Education is the first part, civil enforcement when necessary, and then understanding that we do inspections all the time and continue to do the inspections throughout the city. And when necessary, we'll have the criminal law that we can enforce as well, but it's not the first approach. People should be compliant, and we should be concerned about our public safety and making sure that if they're going to participate in this market, please participate legally. If you're making a decision to participate outside of the law, understand that there are agencies that have oversight, agencies that have inspection authority, and that we will be enforcing it as much as possible throughout all 5 boroughs of the city to ensure compliance.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Street Soldiers on the new Cannabis reality. You can share it and watch it again on our Fox 5 NY YouTube page.